I recently received a press release from Jean-Michel Jarre's UK publicist regarding a collaboration and release he's done with a new artist called Deathpact. The track is called Reprise and it is part of the Oxymore project. Let's talk all about this track. Hello to you, my friend. I hope you're well. This is the second Jean-Michel Jarre video on my channel. I'm quite embarrassed to say that after this channel being nearly 4 years old, I've only spoken about Jean-Michel Jarre once. Well, that's not true. I've mentioned him on the channel, but I've never really done an in-depth video on him. And this video, which you can click on the link here and watch, was my first Jean-Michel Jarre video. And in that, I was talking about the collaboration between him and Martin L. Gore for the track called Brutalism Part 2. Now, Martin Gore, also one of my all-time favorite artists, and what a fascinating collaboration. That video not only received a lot of traffic, but it also received a lot of comments, of which a lot of them were, "Thank you for finally speaking about Jean-Michel Jarre." My apologies. And it's a pleasure to talk about Jean-Michel Jarre because he's one of the reasons I got into music and became a producer, so it's only nothing but a pleasure. So, what do I think about this track, Reprise? Well, my feelings are quite similar compared to the feelings I had for the track he did with Martin Gore. And you can watch that video, and in that video I spoke about how Jean-Michel Jarre is not a one-trick pony, and part of his longevity and success was not only the synthesized sounds, not only the fact that he was a genius and brilliant at orchestrating, and creating amazing sounds and textures and light shows and all that, but he also had the melodic element. There are a lot of producers these days who are very good at sound design, and there are those who are good at, composition. It's not often that you find someone who can be a master at both, and indeed Jean-Michel Jarre was. And I was speaking with a friend the other day, and we were talking about his first album. I mean, if you listen to that, it's completely timeless, and it hasn't aged completely. And this is something he was very good at doing. In the early days, it was kind of like he just did what he was doing. He wasn't really, from what I could tell, he wasn't too much influenced by what's out there. It's changed a little bit over the years. He just seemed to be a little bit more, I guess, media savvy and sort of keeping an eye on what the trends are, which is another story. This track, from what I've heard so far, Reprise, very much the same. The emphasis on the song is more on, as far as I'm concerned, it's more on technology, whereas the older songs, sort of classic Jarre, there's the emphasis on composition, arrangement, classical melodies, that kind of vibe, and synthesized sound, and all the technology and production. This really focuses more on production and synthesized sound and all that. And that's not a bad thing, but this is leaving Jean-Michel Jarre fans a bit divided. Now, it's very difficult when you're an artist that's been around as long as Jean-Michel Jarre has. I mean, he's been going for many, many years. It's always difficult when you're an artist because you want to move forward. You want to keep yourself interested, but at the same time, you want to keep the fans happy and you want to bring new fans on board. Now, it is impossible to please everyone. But as I said in my first video, Jean-Michel Jarre has got nothing to prove, and he's definitely done what he's wanted to do, and the direction he's going in now is definitely where he feels he needs to be, whereas it's not everyone's cup of tea for many reasons. So I just want to read you a line from the press pack. It says, Jean-Michel Jarre has collaborated with the avant-garde electronic artist Deathpact on a new version of his current single, Brutalism. While the original version of the track takes the inspiration from the early days of Berlin techno, the Reprise places it firmly in the underground dance floor of today. And that is definitely well said, because it is very modern sounding. It's very much leaning into the dance kind of field. The sound of this record is, as I say, it's incredibly innovative. The Reprise starts off with a sort of a 1, 2, 3, 4 to the floor, a typical boom, 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 and alongside that you have this melody, a very fragmented. What I mean by that is it's not a sort of like a smooth melody. It's kind of like bum 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 bum. It's very modern sounding. The sound used on that melody, it's a kind of like a synth brass sound, I guess. Check out Equinox Part 4. I'll leave a link in the description below. Listen to that and you will hear how the sound is kind of, I don't know if it's intentionally paying homage to that song, but it is a similar kind of sound. Now, it's not a very melodic track, as I say, and indeed that lead melody bong, 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 seems to be played in the key of C minor, and it sounds to me like it's played on an arpeggio. And if you're a producer, you will know what it sounds like when you trigger notes on an arpeggio pattern. It kind of has that type kind of pokey, kind of jerky kind of sound. But yeah, it's very innovative. It's not everyone's cup of tea. What I do like about this track, as I did like with the collaboration track Brutalism 2, which he did with Martin Gore, I love the innovation. I love the sound, and you listen to it, and it's so interesting to listen to. Now, unlike sort of old school Jean-Michel Jarre music, you'd kind of hear it once and you'd kind of walk away humming it. This isn't that. As I say, the emphasis on this is really on production. The rules to electronic music have always been the same. It's present music in a way that's never been heard before and come up with sounds that have never been heard before. So the emphasis on this is very much to be current, and it is also really pushing the frontiers of sound. Will this go down as an evergreen track? Will we be talking about this as we did about, Oxygen and things like that? I doubt it. I really think that as innovative as this is, I think it's clearly going with a trend, whereas older stuff like the earlier stuff, it was very timeless, and because it was so timeless, you can listen to it and it doesn't sound dated. This sounds very, very modern, and it sounds fantastic, but it's because it kind of sounds of the time. I feel that maybe in 10 years' time, this will sound dated. I don't know. I could be wrong. All I said, as I did with the first track he did with Martin Gore, I liked this Reprise track, and I like the Brutalism track. I love listening to it on a good sound system, really loud, and you hear all the detail, and it's almost like a masterclass for sound design. You're like, wow, because it is very, very impressive. So it fulfills my needs and my hunger as a producer who loves electronic sound. It does not, however, fulfill my needs as a musician and someone who loves melody and sort of like composition and stuff. But then again, you have to judge it on what it is. But for what it's doing, I give it full marks because it really is very, very innovative. Let's talk about Deathpact now. Deathpact I've never heard of, and I'm sure a lot of you haven't, or some of you may have. I have not done a lot of research on Deathpact, and I am indeed... I'll start following them on Instagram soon, but I will leave links in the description below, and you can check out their social media, their YouTube channel, and their website. But from what I've seen so far, the emphasis of this is very radical. It's very sort of like in your face, quite scary, very artsy. There is nothing middle of the road about this. It's very full on. So, but it is very niche, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But Jean-Michel Jarre would not work with you if you weren't good. So this is an incredible compliment to them for Jean-Michel Jarre wanting to work with them. The members of Deathpact are Kelly Lockhart and Chris Noah. I don't know what they look like because everything I've seen so far is like, masks, and it's all very artsy and a bit like Deadmau5, and well, we know what Deadmau5 looks like, but he always performed with a mask on. And of course there was Daft Punk, and I don't even know what they look like because we always have their faces covered, and this is that kind of thing, face covered, although the music's completely different. It's very unique. It's almost like ASMR. It's like an attack on the senses, and it's very it gives you tingles and stuff because the detail is so good, and it's nice to listen to. I do, but it's certainly not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So Deathpact, you are on my radar, and I will be keeping an eye on you. So all in all, a good collaboration, very, very radical, very, very modern, clearly going for the sort of modern market, but within that quite niche at the same time. This record certainly won't have the sort of mainstream appeal of some of the older Jean-Michel Jarre stuff. Although a lot of the old Jean-Michel Jarre stuff, I've got to be careful because his catalog is huge. A lot of his stuff, it's not middle of the road. It's not commercial. Some of them were, but yeah, this really is pushing it into a very modern, almost like a niche thing. This does see Jarre pushing the frontiers of sound, and the emphasis on this is clearly more production than anything else. As I say, it's really production. But once again, it ticks all the boxes for what it's doing. I rate it top marks. It's really, really great. Not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm sure there are those of you who like it. If you're an old school Jean-Michel Jarre fan, I'd like to know what you think. You know, are you still on board, or has he lost you? And indeed, if you've just gotten into Jean-Michel Jarre, let me know what you think of this track. Anything you want to say about Jean-Michel Jarre, I'd love to hear. Let's get the conversation going. Please hit subscribe, click the like button, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Lots of love. Adios.